Greetings, and welcome back to EXanima. I'm still here in the expert mode arena, and we're going to get going to our next fight. Up here we have a really challenging enemy. This enemy has a much better one-handed sword, and a good shield, and good armor. She is difficult, no matter what stage of the game you are at, skill-wise, equipment-wise, or otherwise. You're going to have a hard time fighting. Now there you may have seen a sort of oversight in how the mechanics work in this game that can happen sometimes. Basically, my character's arms clip through his body. That's just something that they'll slowly have to figure out how to work out. I don't really hold that against the game. Now something I've noted is that this character, actually more so than previous one-handed and shield-wearing characters, tends to be vulnerable to a left-to-right swing. The other ones previous to this seem to be quicker to react to it and have their guard up for it. Basically, it seemed like their AI was much more prepared for it. Holy shit, I'm about to die. In other words, it seemed like the AI was preset to be on the watch for that more than this character's is. Oh, Black Spike. And I'm dead. Which also brings up an important time to remember that I need to go ahead and reset my timer. I'll shave off 2 minutes there just for the sake of estimation, and begin it. So we died. I'm going to continue talking about that enemy as I fight the other enemies. Of important note, pardon. My nose appears to be trying to drain into my throat, so I have to stop that every now and then. Even though her shield is much bigger than previous shields you've encountered, it's still worth trying a simple block and swing tactic. Because the way it works, as far as I can tell, once they start an attack and follow through with it instead of immediately going for a feint, they are sort of more off balance than usual. And more likely, basically, like, the thing you have to keep in mind is that you are constantly in control of your weapon. Something I can't really talk about as much because because I don't use a shield is that you never are in direct control of your shield. Your character always has complete control of that. You don't. Whether or not they're trying to actively put the shield in front of an attack is something determined by whether or not you are currently holding the attack button and trying to, basically, by not putting something in, actively parry something and block it. However, a shield is constantly a blocking entity in the game. Regardless of whether or not you're deliberately trying to put it there, if a weapon strikes a shield, it is considered blocked. However, though it may be considered blocked, even though you're not deliberately putting it in the way, when you are deliberately trying to put it in the way, it is basically more reinforced. So striking a shield that an opponent isn't actively trying to use is important and can work because they don't have basically the strength of their arm behind it. It may cave into the character and allow you to clip them above or below the shield. So there you saw that because I stepped my attack in, it got over the top of her shield and clipped her in the face. This is where I was talking about. You're just going to have to get used to being able to move around at the same time you're attacking while reading your opponent. Now then, important loot. These are interesting. These are the only ones of these in the entire game, and they take up both these, the greave, and the shoe slot, and they have immense coverage. However, if you look at the defense values, these clearly have better defense. I don't know how these are supposed to be considered more valuable than anything else. I just don't, because there is nothing else in the game that meshes with them or goes on top of them. These you will frequently have, like, even to the point of plate leggings, which will finally take these, but not these. I don't know what the point of these boots are. Like, I carried them with me a ton, just trying to figure out what their point was, because these are the only boots like this in the entire arena. And I have no idea what their point is. Now then, alternative notes. Let's see. Yeah. Yes, her clothing is worthless. There are several characters in the arena that are basically just wearing decorative clothing to color code them. Her gauntlets, I believe, or bracers, I should say, are exactly the same. But if you didn't bring these leather greaves, these leather bracers, sorry, words. These leather bracers are from the novice arena. So I only have them because I brought them with me from beating the novice arena. If you didn't have those, then the bracers you would currently have, the leather ones, would be inferior to these by maybe a full circle's worth spread out across a couple of defense levels. Now these are... Oh, well, I stand corrected. Many of my memories appear to be very foggy. This is actually better. Voila. Now this, like I said, is the shield I was talking about. The heater shield. As far as I can tell from when I was using it, it seems to be made of wood. I don't know if the material a shield is made out of matters or not, because it doesn't tell you a weight stat, it doesn't tell you a coverage stat, it doesn't tell you anything, so you're basically just guessing based on its size. Therefore, I assume you want the biggest shield you can. I don't know. It's just kind of hard to tell. And the reason why it matters is for the opponent after this one. Now this opponent is wielding a very unusual weapon. You'll have a hard time figuring out how his balance is affected on this weapon. Like, the weapon's description itself also says that it's just weird. Basically, he wants to hit you square with the center of that curve on his weapon. You'll notice that even though he's getting a bunch of hits on me, he's done no red damage to me. Some of that's just the ton of leather that I'm hits on me. He's the other part of it, no red damage square hits with that center of his weapon. Some of that's just the ton of leather that I'm wearing. And of course, because he's a polearm wielder, he is also vulnerable to just the block and smack technique. Now that's not to say that that technique is just always going to work. It's just, if you do it, you get a hit eventually. Frequently do like so, over and over again, you're very likely to get. However, it will become much more effective if you start stepping around, trying to actually get around guards. And tried to put too much weight into a swing there because I thought I had it. There we go. You'll also notice that you need to get a whole bunch of hits in on him if you're not using some kind of... This enemy is wearing a plate mail, so you're going to... I saw him flinch heavily at my blade. I thought he was about to hit the ground. He was perfectly on balance, and he punished me for it. That was a mistake. He was not about to hit the ground. Now that I am now stepping back into the arena again, we're going to go for the aggressive fails. Attack, and it failed. A simple sidestep. And he's dead. So as I would like to point out, it may not have sounded or looked like I was getting very strong hits on him because of the clank sound that it makes, and only 2 of those attacks actually drew blood visually. However, because many of those attacks were occurring when my cursor was set on the enemy, the game considered them more effective blows. Like, because enemies don't have HP bars, this is something that's very difficult to track. And ultimately, maybe there's a mechanic I'm not understanding, and I'm just wrong about this. He was so close to having a sword in the face. Oh, and I got cut in the head. You'll notice that that did a ton of red damage to me. I am really behind. In expert mode, you'll very frequently, once you get some plate armor on yourself, just constantly be taking exclusively yellow damage. Yeah, I'm not doing so hot against her now. Like I said, this is an enemy that you will constantly be having difficulties with until you have, like, even after you've mastered most of the mechanics in the game, you'll still be having troubles with it. Oh, didn't get the guard back up in time, and I'm dead again. Aggression attack, and bam! A solid clean hit. However, because of the control required to get a left to right swing, my cursor was way off from him when the attack actually hit him, so I probably lost a significant amount of damage that I could have had if I had just stopped it accurately aiming at him. I'm not entirely sure whether or not I agree with that, because if you notice, I put a ton of weight behind that swing, and it started swinging my character around. I put so much strength into it. I feel like an attack like that ought to have more priority for damage than whether or not you stop the cursor halfway into the swing to block off the enemy, basically. Yeah, there is an instance, that last hit there, of what I was trying to talk about how the enemy computer is basically looking at where your mouse cursor is as well. So you sometimes just swinging your character all the way around with the momentum can get an attack in pretty square. However, except if it wasn't for the fact that I basically smacked her in the head right before that and got a huge chunk of her life off, I would be willing to bet that we'd still be duking it out right now for another good minute or so, because I'm pretty sure that that attack, that last attack there that I hit her with, probably wasn't all that effective damage-wise. Now this is something else that I didn't think of while I was fighting him the previous time. This enemy, despite wielding a pawn, has extremely short range. You can very frequently just step back and then attack him. Now, something I want to see if I can get started here is a specialty of the two-handed sword that I used to use much more often than I did, which is basically the ability to just constantly be starting and stopping attacks, because you can do that so much faster than your opponent. Ooh, he went for 2 overheads there. This guy seems to be really fond of overhead attacks. Probably pretty easy to punish him for that. Now, let's go ahead and, even though I'm not going to use it, I want to go ahead and see if I can pick up that weapon and show it to you. I believe this is, the Bardiche. If you'll notice, this is an awkward weapon. It is both slash and impact based. Normally, a weapon it has a lot of impact is crush based. So it's even by its own descriptions an unusually proportioned poleaxe X. Anyway, English. It has a fairly high weight and not very great balance. Like, obviously I've never tried this thing, but just fighting the thing is very unusual. I bet if you could figure out the ins and outs of that weapon and master it, you could probably do some pretty interesting and tricky things. Now then, time to check it out. A short-sleeved chain shirt, which means that we really want to pay attention to see if we can put this on. Yep. Our current one, however, is slightly better in coverage because it's a long sleeve. And again, this one is slightly better because it has more slash protection. So obviously, that's a call you'll have to make. I'm going to stay with the long sleeve because, like I said, I'm wielding a two-handed weapon. If you have a one-handed weapon and shield, this may actually be more valuable to you. It's your choice. Now then, this replaces this. It is inherently better because the lamellar is metal. You can just clearly see without having to specifically count circles that it has more defense values. Of equal value, plate helmet goes right on top of that leather cap. Lamellar van braces, they're metal. You don't even have to bother looking. Over here we have leather shoes. You don't have to worry about it. I, however, have remembered to bring my with much, so I don't even worry about it. Lamellar greaves. Of course, these though are cloth, so they're crap. So the next fight. Now here we have an extraordinarily important enemy for a two-hit. He has an upgrade for you. However, it's a give upgrade. Once I actually get something connect strong enough with him, actually, we'll go over that when I can actually look at the stats. Of course, he's a much more improved AI of the two-handed sword wielders. This is going to take a little bit. So, yeah, so like I said, the two-handed sword guys, the guard, they won't often fall. They tend to be much the block and then quicker on the... against them, you're pretty much going to be needing to use clever tricks in positioning and sword movements in order to actually get an attack on them, such as stepping in and instantly swinging the weapon they can't hit from. So basically, a good trick here is to watch for when they're swinging from one angle, and then you want to swing from the opposite way. That's a solid hit on me there. There, I just predicted that he was about to attack, and so I had my attack started at roughly the same time. But I stepped into it, which allowed it to hit faster. That's just one of those things that are things that you really go for the combat. You can only do once you've got a feel. Oh yeah, there's something else I need to talk about. No enemy in the game is ever going to duck. That is exclusively a thing that you can do. However, it's not... maybe it's more effective with a one-handed weapon. With a two-handed weapon, because whenever you block, you're pretty much going to be dragging your sword on the ground. Like that. And as you can see, with my sword caught in the ground, it can't be pulled up to block me. So I got... Now, even though no enemy in the game are all equipped with the effective means of hitting an opponent who is crouching. The overhead. Crouch. If you start to do a bunch of crouching, they're going to start to do a bunch of overhead swings. If you're good enough, you may be able to do that AI and, you know, get in beneath their guard to abuse, but I'm not quite that good. However, an important technique that you can do with guarding is that if you go ahead and... Oh, got hit in the head. If you start an attack and start stepping into the opponent, and then just tap the crouch button, you can often get your weapon to hit below the opponent's guard. Ooh. Thought I had him there. Oh, I also thought I was out of his reach there. I'm making a bunch of novice mistakes there. Trying to show off and also talk about crouch swinging. I'm not paying attention to basic knowledge for the game. Now, the reason I learned the crouch swing... Ah, she hit me before I could finish it. Is basically for opponents like this, where it's easy to get that left leg with a crouching swing. Okay, so I would be much closer to death right now without all these metal pieces that I've taken from the previous enemies. Ooh, she almost got knocked off balance there. But yeah, you'll notice now that I've got metal armor, even though she's wielding a sword, that metal is extremely effective at blocking the red damage that swords are so good at. Now this obviously becomes a problem later in the game for someone like me who's good at wielding two-handed swords when the enemies are wearing literally full plate mail armor. I'm talking knights on horses, full plate mail armor. Well, obviously there's no horses, I'm just emphasis for effect. Medieval plate mail armor, full plate mail. Literally, full plate mail. That is what the last few sets of enemies in this game are wearing. And by that point, you too will be wearing it, just, yeah. Slashed and cut damage aren't going to be as effective as blunt damage. So if you start the game learning how to do, how to fight with a blunt weapon of any kind, two-handed, one-handed, and shield, or whatever, so this is our last fight, you're going to be a lot better equipped for dealing with the expert arena. It literally got to the point where I stopped and tried to learn how to wield a one-handed mace and a shield, just to deal with the plate enemies that immediately showed up. Because even Gentle told me that has that extraordinarily more effective than the swords. However, I ultimately win the game just using the two-handed swords because it was what I was most practiced with, and I did also what I was best at wielding. Having said that, I really need to focus on this fight now, so excuse me holding to get hits on the enemy with. Focus on. So yeah, this enemy is a challenge, and I'm dead. Maybe so that's just because I am wielding a weapon of equal value to this at any particular. Now, I'm going to take the time to stop and talk about why these two weapons. It is actually of worth to keep the sword that I currently have over the one that he has. The things that his sword does better: slash damage. It's effective on opponents after him, and the balance, the one I currently have, because the sword I currently have, despite having a little less balance, has a bit more range and a bit more impact value. It is what would allow me to do a little bit more damage to a fully armored opponent. It's impactable against an armored opponent. So ultimately, while I did go more for his sword to win the game because it had a higher value, I could swing it faster. I bet that there are people who can use this longer sword that I have and its impact or effectively apply it. I'm just saying these are damage and just are not inherently better. Somebody can probably tell you how to do it. Values that while different, I'll see you next time. Better. Bye-bye.